What you're about to see is the 6th story in my Antique Magic series. It's entitled Light Yule Problem. It's something that I wrote for an indie blog hop last year for Christmas, and I thought it would be nice for my loyal subscribers to get to see the author read it to you. If you'd like to read along, I'll put links in the description for where you can purchase the story. Alas, there will be no bing at the end of each page for you to turn the page, but I hope you enjoy this anyway. I'm not used to reading on camera, so please be kind to my mistakes. Welcome, y'all, and I hope you're having a good day, and I hope that y'all are doing well in this very strange pandemic. I've been writing, and I just wanted to read something to y'all that I'd written for Christmas for my readers and Antique Magic fans. I thought you might get a kick out of actually hearing it, as well as reading it on your own. I've got a little bit of a sore throat from trying this a couple of times, so please forgive me if I pause here and there to take a drink. And if there's anything else that seems strange, well, I'm not used to doing this kind of video, but I still hope it's enjoyable to you. Okay. Chapter 1. The streets surrounding Starfort Collectibles hummed with the traffic of holiday shoppers rushing to the malls. Caitlin ignored them to focus instead on the customer examining the antique desk in the center of her shop. The beautiful piece of furniture was of pine, carved with pleasing scrollwork designs down its legs, and older than Caitlin's own namesake. Not quite 200 years old, but close. The customer picked up a delicate antique green gallo glass Christmas ornament circa 1919 Caitlin had set on the desk for a splash of cheer and color, and opened the little drawer before which it stood. She took the ornament from him and placed it gently in a plush rag doll's lap. After opening another few drawers and knocking on the top to test its solidity, she guessed, he approached the counter. "It's perfect. My daughter will love it." Caitlin hoped so. The first thing they'd done when it arrived in the shop last week was magically bless, douse, and cleanse it. Then she placed protection spells so the family wouldn't have any problems with their order. If the creativity and study spells she set on it helped the recipient in any way, she would be glad. Christmas was well on its way, and Yule right around the corner. Lights twinkled from local store windows. A cheap plastic Santa screamed ho, ho, ho from another shop yard. Another store owner across the street added even more fake snow to a manger's roof. With all those visual prompts in their antique store to think of, Caitlin was surprised at herself for ignoring the calendar. After all, they'd had a steady stream of shoppers into the store since Thanksgiving. She resumed draping a gaudy silver garland over the packed shelves. How did I overlook Yule? She couldn't blame her usual active magical life. The folk of the Otherworld of Anwen, who often needed them, had given them a whole 3 weeks with no new explosion. Only Thanksgiving had been chaotic, thankfully. Trying not to summon up any new trouble by thinking about her supernatural assignments too hard, Caitlin finished her drape and exited the shop. She stood back as her husband Trevor, hammer in hand, pounded nails into the eaves of their store. A pile of cords sat waiting on the porch step, the cords supporting Christmas light bulbs shaped like tiny rosebuds. The creator had painted the bottom half of the glass white, the tops a pretty deep blush pink, while the glass itself sported delicate ripples to indicate the petals. Vintage, she'd seen them while rummaging with a cellar in the woman's grandmother's storage unit. Trevor paid her way too much for them and spent an extra hour deciding they didn't need to go in the shop, but on it. They worked today at hanging them around the eaves. The temperatures in Gulf Breeze were a balmy 80 degrees today. Judging by the forecast, Florida might get cool for Christmas, but Caitlin hoped not. The warmth would make it a perfect end to a rather unique year, and winter's chill could stay away as long as it wanted, as far as she was concerned. February's usual freezes would come quite soon enough. They had to get through Yule first, though. Trevor paused between strikes. I think we'd be better off sticking to smaller Yule lights in the windows rather than hanging these ones all over the eaves. She handed him up another nail. This is nicer, trust me. They'll attract more customers. A few of the surrounding business owners came over this weekend, hinting they'd waited too late in putting decorations up. The suggestion put the idea in Caitlin's mind, and here they were, spending a lull in Monday's business decorating. Not mentioning their neighbors' stores were lit up like a big city strip seemed like a good idea if she wanted him to keep helping her decorate. Trevor threaded the string's smaller bulbs through the crescent moon cut into the eaves. Whatever, as long as Mr. Christmas Past doesn't come strolling in. Caitlin scoffed and frowned up at him. Don't speak what you don't want coming to life. A shadow drew her attention upward. Their most recent assignment, Retgar, a dragon of shimmering pearlescent white hide, circled the building. The dragon's dark cloak, made of mottled hair, flapped around him, but still concealing his stumpy left wing. In this guise, he was as big as a plane, his claws longer than Caitlin's arm. She waved to him. Retgar circled low and landed in their yard. Greetings. Hey, I didn't know you were here visiting. Not visiting per se. I'm in search of a special gift for my family. Anything we can help with? What would a dragon's family like from their, as he'd once called it, hoard? We've got some shiny chalices inside. Would you like one? Even as Trevor asked the question, Caitlin crossed her fingers. I wouldn't want to inconvenience you over something trivial. We'll talk again later. Okay, then. Retgar zoomed off, and Caitlin and Trevor shared an amused glance. Teenagers. This was their common complaint about Retgar, as they thought the dragon had the temperament of an adolescent human. Trevor returned to his work, and she, remembering where she'd left off, lifted her hand. She pointed away from the shop, tracing the outline of the property. Pale blue light glowing at her fingertips, her protective spell saying in her mind, a spell she'd memorized so long ago, reciting it had become second nature. In the name of the goddess of light, keep all evil from my sight. There, Trevor said. There what? Caitlin shaded her eyes from the sun. The last one's secure. Try it now. She strode into the shop and hit the light switch. A small Santa doll sat on an antique table by the door, one hand extended upward, as if he waved at her. Caitlin gave him a nod of greeting, as she had from the moment she set him out here, and I hope Santa found someone else to deal with any complaints from his elfin workers. While she was inside, the phone rang. Starfort Collectibles, she said as she answered. Hello, I was in there a few minutes ago. Bought the desk? Yes. Did he find something amiss with it? I thought I saw a pin set there, too. Squatting beside their display case, she spotted one she thought he might be referring to. There was one Trevor had labeled 1928. We have one circa 1928 and a few others. Are you interested in older or newer? My wife might appreciate the one from 28. How much? She read the price off the sticker. Oh, thanks. I can hold it for you if you like. Maybe. Let me think about it. Caitlin agreed and sighed as she hung up the phone. The magic doesn't always work. Kate, did you put the lights on? I did. Trevor cursed. What's wrong now? Caitlin turned the switch back off and stepped onto the porch so she didn't have to shout. You didn't electrocute yourself, did you? No answer. Fear shot up Caitlin's spine. Please don't let me be right. Trevor? No, not Trevor, but their ancestor's ghost, Roland, as usual dressed in his Civil War-era uniform, shimmered into life beside her, concerned as ever with their family. Is something amiss, Katie? I hope not. Caitlin stepped off the porch. Trevor? Trevor stood on the ladder, unscrewing a light bulb and screwing it back in, intent on his work. He grunted a nonverbal answer. Nothing scary or paranormal. No even slightly mundane mishap had befallen her beloved. One could never know, she mused with their odd life. Caitlin's heartbeat slowed. Roland smirked and disappeared into a sunbeam as she scolded Trevor. Don't scare me like that, honey. Just answer when I speak to you. Please. You know how I worry about you. Sorry, I'm fine. These lights are the trouble. Do you need to change the bulb? Or see if we can rent out space in someone else's shop who's already finished decorating. Hey, don't knock my shop. Did I say anything against this place? He patted the awning in a loving gesture. All I did was suggest it's perfect the way it is. I'm sure the shop spirits will be glad to hear it. He rotated the bulb one more time, tried again. Nothing. He juggled the bulbs. She informed him of the guy who wanted the pin set. The one Dorothy Parker owned? His statement had her pausing in the doorway. Dorothy Parker? The Dorothy Parker? As in the famous poet Dorothy Parker? So I found in my provenance search. My appraiser concurs. She whistled. Is her ghost haunting it? Not that you told me. Oh yeah, now she remembered. He did have her try connecting with it. You were charging way too little for the set. My appraiser thought so too. Trevor ducked down to meet her gaze. Honey, light switch? She flicked it on. Anything? Nothing. I hate decorating for Yule. I know, honey, but oh no. You had to open an antique shop and cater to the public. He winked at her. I know, I should have listened to you and kept my job with Abby's gallery. There's nothing for it. He entered the shop and charged up the attic staircase. Caitlin waited down here, rummaging around the shop, reorganizing shelves, laying out more tinsel and garland. Here and there she pulled out any figurine, toy, or picture filled with the energy of Christmas, or even reminiscent of the traditional snow-laden winter season Mother Nature often ignored on Florida's behalf, and made a second display. A customer arrived, interrupting her work, and she set about helping the woman pick out a new doll for her granddaughter. A man came in, and she watched him peruse the jewelry case, even rang up the sale of his choice of earrings. Sure, the tall, dark, and handsome customer would win a kiss from the recipient of those earrings. She wondered what her own tall, dark, and handsome was up to. Things scraped across or plunked against the floorboards upstairs, denoting Trevor mucking about in the attic. Attics always made her worry and wonder. Should I have doused the attic in more blessed water this full moon? What had he found up there that was keeping him? They'd had more than a few weird entities in the attic, at home mostly, but here as well, for her peace of mind. Anything between paranormal and mundane could be occupying him. She hoped his silence stemmed from concentration on his search. He'd call her up if anything abnormal materialized. He emerged after the earring buyer left. I found an excess bulb. It won't match. I know, but maybe spaced out between the others. No one will notice the odd bulb, he said, heading outside. Caitlin took the portable phone with her as she followed him, in case he fell off the ladder or the excess bulb produced a genie and she had to call their coven for help. Trevor plugged the bulb into the old one's socket. She flicked the switch. Still nothing. Grumbling to himself about stupid electric light bulbs, he removed it, climbed down the ladder, and went inside. To test the outlet, he connected the phone charger to it. The charger lit up, proving the outlet worked fine. This doesn't make sense, he complained to himself, and left the shop to retrieve something from his truck. He soon returned, carrying what looked like a black pen with a transparent yellow tip. Caitlin saw the word voltage on its side. This tool he touched to the wires connecting to the vintage bulbs. Nothing happened. This didn't blow out on me, too, he grumbled and set it against the nearest electrical plug. The tester emitted a loud, teeth-rattling buzz. No, it works. Caitlin mashed her fingers to her ears until he set the tester aside. It's the lights, then. The bulbs are burnt out or something. I hope it's something normal and we're not having more paranormal trouble. Trevor dropped his head back, angled slightly to the west, glaring at the porch ceiling. Okay, y'all. Respectfully, I request that you knock it off. Caitlin laughed, but added, This is our will, so mote it be. She wiggled her fingers, and he handed the lights over. Inside, she plugged them into an outlet in his office. The lights glowed with a pleasing light, but soon blinked out. She tapped the computer mouse. The computers and lights all work fine, but these Christmas bulbs won't last a second. What in the world? It's these bulbs, then. I guess we'll have to go buy some new ones. Come on, we're late for ritual. Chapter 2. Caitlin, dressed in a gold lace swing dress with red chiffon lining she picked up at a vintage clothing store in Ybor City a while back, added her silver charm bracelet, spun the chain of her peridot and gold antique necklace so the clasp resettled at the back where it belonged, and pinned up her hair in a soft romantic bun. When she was satisfied, she went down to the kitchen. A shepherd's pie waited in the fridge, and she transferred it to a container to carry out. While she worked, she spoke into her phone, ideas about the shop and for her blog. Antique Christmas lights shaped like rosebuds. What year made? She glanced at the phone to see several of the wrong pictures. Roses, antique lamps, Christmas lights of all sorts, none resembling what she wanted. She sighed and punched in the description and added, mid-century? The search engine displayed results for everything from teacups decorated with roses to movies, books, and albums with Rose in the title to women named Rose who collected rose things or grew roses. Stupid algorithms, intelligent my foot. She chose the link for an antiques website and there found similar ceramic lights. Honey? At the bottom of the stairs, she set the casserole on the table by their door, on top of the day's bills and junk mail. Next to it, she added 4 colorful gift bags, one each for Maria, Beryl, Celia, and Heather. Trevor strolled out of their bedroom, one arm in a fine black dress shirt. I gotta get my boots on and then I'll be ready. She ran up the stairs and drew her fingers over his chest. And button your shirt up, pal. No one's allowed to see your skin but me. Well, not counting when we're out at the beach. She tapped her hand against his chest. Tonight you're not. He wrapped one arm around her shoulders and kissed her, sending a sweetness coursing through her. What do you say we stay home and see more? If you want to field Beryl's "Where are you?" calls, be my guest. One more caress. She lowered her gaze. Hold that thought for later. Fine, he sighed and stepped away. I'm holding you to it, for sure. Am I so late you need to yell for me? No. She showed him the phone. I didn't find those exact lights, but this site has similar ones. He buttoned one more button and took the phone from her. 1943, a little earlier than I thought. His thumb slid down the phone's screen, towing his shoes away from the closet to put them on. All right, well, in my defense, my era of historical expertise is the Art Deco period, but points for guessing. She checked herself in the mirror. No smudge marred her makeup, but the cubic zirconia hairpin holding her red hair out of her face seemed too much. Removing it, she picked a plain black bobby pin and slid it into place, and as a last thought, added a swipe of bronze eyeshadow that complemented her green eyes. I think you paid too much for them, at least according to the antiques site. They're worth $30. He'd given her $100. I'd guess even less than that since they don't work right. He sidled up to her and took his keys off the dresser next to her. So sue me for chivalry. Ready? She agreed, and as the sun was just sinking below the horizon, they arrived at Beryl's apartment. Though they were approaching the new moon, Beryl had asked to hold their usual winter solstice meeting early this month. She and her boyfriend had plans to meet with his mother in Toronto for the holiday. The sense of her fir Yule tree in the corner of her dining room, her cinnamon, fudge, eggnog, and incense filled the tiny space. Lights glittered from the tree, adding a soft festive glow to the atmosphere. A few gift bags waited underneath its thick branches. She draped a green and red blanket over the back of her white couch for an extra splash of color and set a vintage-style Father Christmas on her altar next to the usual goddess figurine and candles at the 4 points of the compass. Caitlin set the Christmas gifts down and greeted Maria, her young protege. Trevor nudged her fondly. Hey, Squirt, are you taller than you were last week? Maria's face scrunched in annoyance, but it did nothing to mar her Hispanic beauty. She tugged on the end of her dark ponytail. You always think so. I don't. She and Caitlin grumbled about their college classes as they helped Beryl and her beau, Tom, in the kitchen. Fresh shaven, his light hair and skin still dewy from the steam of a shower, he dressed casually enough, she thought, but wasn't wearing shoes. That alone made Caitlin curious. Are you joining us for the circle tonight, Tom? Nah, you go on and have fun. I'm meeting some buddies. Tom's hazel eyes twinkled, and he kissed Beryl and leaned his thin frame across her to steal a bit of fudge. Hey, Beryl swatted at him with a spatula. I'd better go. He tugged his dark gray long-sleeved t-shirt, letting it settle back into place over him. He winked at Beryl. Before she turns me into a frog. She swatted him, this time aiming for his ass. Out. Caitlin hid a fond smile behind her hand as Tom retreated. Gods, y'all are adorable. Beryl giggled. He is, isn't he? When she was sure he wasn't listening, she took up Beryl's hand. I can't believe he's taking you to meet his mother. That's fantastic. But worry more than excitement filled Beryl's eyes. Caitlin blinked. Isn't it? Beryl fiddled with a barrette, holding a sprig of holly tight she'd shoved into her blonde hair. Gods, I hope so. Why do you sound reluctant about this? What if she hates me? She pulled the barrette out and shoved it back in, and then opened her refrigerator to pull out a bottle of non-alcoholic mead. She might call me a witch, and not the good kind. Caitlin took the mead bottle from her and glanced down from the cabinet. You're nervous. Don't worry, my friend. I'm sure you'll charm her faster than you think. I hope so. We'll charge a pendant tonight to make sure of it, but I know everything will be fine. If nothing else, you'll get to play in the snow. Beryl pointed to her. Which you hate, so let's just forget that. Caitlin nudged her. Forget it. I get to live vicariously through you. Duly noted, and I'll try to remember to build a snow woman in your honor. Celia sidled up to her for a hug. Oh, now you've got some pieces of hair all out of order. It's okay, Caitlin said. At least it's out of my face. She shoved a loose piece of hair behind her ear. Celia rounded her, took the pins out, tugged, pinned, and patted. There, that's better. Maria handed around the gifts she'd purchased for everyone. Caitlin gave her a crystal witch they'd found at a friend's shop. Nothing but good vibes, of course. I wouldn't expect less. Maria hugged her in thanks, and they sat down to the potluck dinner. Besides her dish and Beryl's breads, puddings, and cookies, Heather brought a bottle of mead. Celia provided a pie, while Maria's offering to the dinner consisted of pork and paella she and her mother made. After dinner, they lit the central candle, called the quarters and the circle. Rhonabwy sniffed the circle as usual, then settled down right on its perimeter. Maria patted its head as she carried the incense burner around without missing a step. Circle cast, they sent their magic out for good luck in the new year. Beryl ended the ritual with, Merry meet, merry part, and may we all find the love we want this year. Hear, hear, Heather and Celia agreed. Beryl set her charged crystal pendant onto the corner of her dish and raised her glass to them. And may some of us realize being a mommy might not be a bad thing. Trevor made a face at her over his mug of hot chocolate. Oh, now don't do that to Celia. We haven't found her the right man yet. Celia spit out her drink. Some of her mead dribbled a trail of wet dots down the front of her sweater. I think she was talking about you, our sweet wizard. She tossed back her elaborate braid, laced with green and red plaid ribbon. In fact, I'm sure she means you. From her spot to the other side of Trevor, she nudged him fondly. And I'll add some wizard we know, which should long to be a daddy by the time he leaves here, too. Caitlin handed her friend a napkin. Don't make these witches hurt you. It's the Yuletide, after all. Speaking of the most expensive time of the year, Maria plopped down next to Rhonabwy and gave him a bone sprinkled with something. The hound gnawed at it, fluffy white tail knocking happily and silently against Beryl's rug. What's the black stuff on it? Trevor gestured to it with his fork. Didn't you have time to clean it? Nah, I had the time, but don't want to. It's special dirt. How so? It's graveyard dirt. She shoved in a forkful of pie. I thought it might add some flavor he'd like, him being a hound of Anwen. Caitlin shuddered. Do I need to remind you Arianrod's keepers threw him out because he wouldn't eat souls, and who gave you the permission to dabble in gray magic, my friend? It isn't gray magic. It's perfectly legit. Not one, but 5 witches scoffed. Maria pursed her lips and slid her locket along its chain. Y'all worry too much. It's okay. Beryl grumbled. Heather said, like hell it is. Maria slumped against the couch. Calm down. It's from Awella's grave, and I've had it for about a year. I cleansed it, and she gave me permission. No worries. Beryl tugged a lock of the girl's hair. Look at you, our little witch. Don't let your mom blame me for the dirt. Only if it's cleansed will I vouch for you. It is. So how's the shop doing? Horrible, and nice distract from the subject. I'm not done reading you the riot act. Heather lowered her glass and pushed up her sleeves of a green, long-sleeved silk blouse. What happened at the shop that's horrible? Do we want to know? Celia asked. Trevor snorted. She's being facetious. The shop is doing fine. It's the decorating for Yule we're having trouble with. What's wrong with the decorating? Caitlin selected a bit of fudge from the plate before her. We've got a set of lights from a recent acquisition. They're pretty, but they refuse to work. Biting into the fudge, sweet chocolate and cinnamon tantalized her taste buds, no matter how many times in different ways we tried to fix them. So far, Trevor amended. Switch the bulbs out, Heather suggested. You'd think a practical solution would work. Caitlin touched Trevor's thigh, being practical witches. But when has anything ever gone the way we've planned? Besides, these bulbs are one of a kind. You can't return them, just get a different set. I could. Caitlin took another nibble. I like these, though. And the other particular design I had my eye on before we found them is on back order until March. Trevor juggled 2 cookies in one hand, trying, Caitlin guessed, to decide which to eat first. Did we mention the vintage set is around 75 years old? Caitlin took the decision out of his hands and snatched 1 cookie from his palm. The chocolate mint in its center made her shudder in delight, which we think fits the shop. 1940s? Maria turned her mug of hot chocolate. Oh, no question they do. You two are too particular, Beryl said. Or is there something else interesting about them we should know about their history? I've not done a thorough provenance for them yet, but then I haven't had time. But her question is a good one. Trevor caressed her back. Honey, any feelings on the subjects of ghosts attached to it? You said no the other day. Caitlin frowned hard. Was a wayward spirit energy attached to it and bothering her? She sipped her mead, considering it, but coming to no conclusion. I doubt it. I've touched them a few times now and haven't felt any paranormal entities in them. Who ever heard of a ghost haunting a set of Christmas lights anyway? I'd agree, Beryl said, if anyone but you two were telling us this story. Chapter 3. After she and Trevor got done lecturing Maria about the graveyard dirt, following her home that night and personally driving her to and from the graveyard and watching her dump it back on her grandmother's grave, only then could Caitlin calm down and concentrate on the antique Christmas lights. Beryl was right about them, she knew, but her friend's conviction didn't change her perceptions of the lights. She was certain she didn't feel anything strange about them. She was being stubborn, and she knew it. They didn't need to put the lights up. What she'd done so far should be decoration enough, and if the neighboring business owners complained it wasn't, why did she care about anyone else's opinion? Yet something about those antique lights drew her as much as they bothered her. What were the lights but a plastic representation of every wish they would put out for the new year, wishes they'd already made in ritual space? The other decorations she'd set out were enough. Stop fretting about those lights. Let it go. But they refused to let her rest, so she opened her mind and called on the universe for help. Tell me why we're obsessing. Though she waited, letting the meditation draw out until her spine tingled with uncomfortable aches, no helpful images emerged. She made a note of the night's ritual and her vague impressions here in her book of shadows. Lights, nothing but lights. What does it mean? And decided it was mundane enough to share with the rest of the world, so she added it to her blog. Finished, she decided to follow her own advice and release the question. Let the universe tell her the answer in its own time. Besides, her stomach roiled, surely from worry. A pre-bedtime cup of soothing tea enticed her, and she didn't want to ignore its call. She drank it down as she thumbed through her book of shadows. Love recipe. They'd always been content in their love life. Rain spell. Her garden was a little parched, but nothing the water hose wouldn't fix. Spell for expertise in cooking. Spell for expertise in dressmaking. Spell for proficiency in medicine. Spell to succeed in business. Spell to attract fairies to your yard. None of these spells seemed useful in her puzzle. She needed to relax her mind if she was to get any valuable information. Instead of obsessing over it another minute, Caitlin dug in her herbs cabinet and spooned the ingredients into a white and satin sachet bag. Honeysuckle, orchid, and primrose petals, a hefty pinch of lavender, and a touch of rose oil, a concoction Trevor's ancestors used for relaxation. Once she'd blessed the whole mix, she put the book aside for the rest of the night. The lights did blink in her dreams, though, once, but no more. Should I be worried about you? The blink occurred before she asked, and not again. Puzzled, she let her dreams shift, but over breakfast she told Trevor about the blink. We'll take another whack at the things then, he said. Yet Caitlin still grumbled at it as they made their way through the morning traffic. They'd left Ronabwe to guard the house, unsure if what they dealt with was a real, if paranormal, threat. If so, they didn't want their home vulnerable. So they two alone came to the shop for another busy Christmas countdown day. Before leaving, Caitlin sniffed her new sachet, decided she liked the rosy scent, and stuffed it in her purse. "One more try," Trevor said, drawing her from her grumpy mood. "We'll make one last attempt to get those lights working before I take them apart for bland decorations." Taking them apart sounds like a better plan. Caitlin stepped onto the porch and reached for the hanging end of the light's cord. "May I suggest a hammer?" Trevor batted her hands away, gentle but firm. "First things first, stand back. If these things explode with some sort of paranormal energy, I don't want you struck by them." Agreed. A coil of her blue magic circled him as she raised her hand. The circle excluded the lights in his fingers so that he held them outside its shielding glow. If the lights exploded with an energy she didn't like, he'd be safe inside. "The same goes for you." He removed the first loop from the eaves and another until he'd unstrung the entire set. Taking the cord inside, he left the bulbs resting on the porch. He plugged them in and touched the switch, with the same result. "That's it, then." He yanked the cord out of the wall. "You tried," Caitlin conceded with a slight tip of her head. "Scrap parts it is." Chapter 4. Another few hours had flown by as customers browsed, made purchases, and chatted with her. Caitlin welcomed the distraction as it kept her from thinking about the non-working lights. Lunchtime was the first time she'd thought of them in hours. On the other hand, what? Trevor opened cans of soda for them, asking the question without losing momentum. "I'm not sure we should scrap those lights." She removed their plastic containers of leftovers from the office's small refrigerator. "Let me try something else first." "Something like what?" "What Beryl said last night got me thinking. I want to turn them on, if we can, in a real circle, cast just for informational purposes, to see what happens." "I thought you said there's no ghost attached to them." "I think I'm wrong. It could be the ghost isn't strong enough to properly communicate." She tugged on her necklace, thinking, "What do you think, Roland?" "I agree. It might not be, but I don't know." Roland's thoughts whispered in her mind. "It could be an infant's ghost." Another twitch to her necklace. "Maybe a stillborn. Benign, but still hanging around its mother. Never mind, we don't know who that mother is." "We could ask the seller." "I doubt she'd tell you something like that." Trevor stroked his beard, thinking, "No, she probably wouldn't. I won't be sure unless I try communicating with it directly, hence needing the circle." "To boost it." She nodded. "It's a theory, but all I've got right now." Trevor tensed up and drooped the same way he always did when he thought about things like untimely death, which reminded him of his own dead twin brother. "Okay, do I need to call the girls?" "I don't think so. Beryl will be dealing with the lunch crowd at Being on Time before she leaves for Canada, and Celia must have appointments from now till New Year's." "Are you sure?" "They'll both pound me if I interrupt, but I'll make sure they know you called on your own behalf. Being chivalrous, you'll take the beating for me." "Of course I will." Taking a last bite of pork, Trevor put the excess back in the fridge. "Home then." Caitlin looked around the office. The space was both tidy yet cluttered, with an old filing cabinet stuffed with bills and paper bills of sale, or copies of online orders. Across from the cabinet, his desk waited, with the computer, phone, pen, and notepad ready for use. The window let in the afternoon sun, keeping the office warm. "You know, I think maybe we should do it here, so we don't have to take them into our home." Good thinking. He locked the shop door and set up a "back soon" sign. Meanwhile, she returned to the office, opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Somewhere she regularly kept innocuous-looking supplies in case anyone poked around. Salt shakers, empty bottles filled with screws, needles, and nails looked harmless enough if one didn't know they'd been charged with a strong will for protection. The one thing she needed was empty. Damn. Problem? "I have to go to the store." She glanced to the windows. "The crab shack." "Why?" She headed out the door. "We're out of salt." "Shoot, I meant to fill that up." She kissed his cheek as she passed him. "No, you had to get the wife to do it." He tugged her back for one more kiss. You are a better witch than me. Dodging traffic hadn't been on her list of things to do today, nor was staring at the annoyed, faux-breasted and sable-haired maitre d' who could barely hear her, she thought, over the music blaring from the speakers mounted on the net-covered wooden walls. Although the savory sense of the spices and cooking seafood was enticing, the delicious mix made her regret the leftovers waiting for her in her own small establishment. A take-out dinner sometime soon wouldn't go amiss, but today she wasn't here for such an order. Salt? The maitre d' said, confusion quirking her Botoxed lips. That's it. Caitlin mentally crossed her fingers. I don't need anything else. The maitre d' set the menu down. I can't help you. Rolling her eyes to the ceiling, Caitlin picked up a menu. 2 iced teas, then, to go. The woman nodded and turned toward the kitchen. And that salt, please. Caitlin shouted after her. The woman returned with a to-go bag, and Caitlin checked it before paying her. 2 teas and 1 small packet of salt filled the flimsy paper bag. She hoped it would be enough as she made a beeline back to Starfort Collectibles. Trevor gave her a funny look when she handed him a foam cup. But we've got our own. She cut him off with a glare and a warning. Don't ask. She split open the salt packet, and they blessed it and sprinkled it in the small circle of the porch. We bless this circle in the name of the goddess of light. Keep all evil from our sight. When blue soft light circled around them, she settled on the porch in a patch of warm sunlight, palms up. The neighbor's plastic Santa repeated its ho-ho-ho, but she ignored it. Should we call Ronabwe? If there was anything evil here, he would eat it and ask questions later. But she didn't need to rush him to Anlin and explain she let him eat 75-year-old glass and whatever toxic components were inside. I hope there's nothing more there than mundane parts. Gazing at the string of lights, she reached out to them, placing her palm against the first bulb, a hint of a pressure, the barest brush of skin to glass. Are you there? Talk to me. Nothing responded. I can't help you if I don't know what the problem is. Another deep breath. Her mind wandered. Frustrated, she got up and opened her purse. What's the use? Something wrong? Trevor asked as she searched. I may need something else this time. She spotted the sachet. An idea occurred to her. Her lips twitched. Fine, I'll give it a shot. There was primrose and lavender in here, and the last edition in itself was a common herb. Settling again, she took a few deep breaths and touched the lights. Her garden rose up in her vision. Flowers dropped their petals, which the wind picked up and blasted around the garden. They puddled around the base of a single rose. The rose burst to life and spawned 3 more on the same stalk. A bark not unlike any mortal dog's. The petals rustled, and something spiraled up like dust motes in the sun. Laughter filled her mind. The dust motes blew up to the roof of a home, like hers, but not. This house had 1 story, and the homeowner had chosen an exterior paint close to the same color used on the Christmas lights, these same ones circling the home's door. 1 dust mote slipped inside the glass bulb, then another. The first laughed, then fluttered. Dust motes don't flutter or laugh. Caitlin sucked in a breath and opened her eyes to see Trevor watching her, concerned as he held her other hand. That can't be right, can it? What can't be right? Until he asked, she didn't realize she'd spoken the question aloud. The lights do have an entity inside. He reared back a little and, breaking her gaze, stared at the lights, snatching them out of her fingers. What kind? Something I never thought existed here. I want Runaway's opinion. She whistled for him. The Hound of Anwin materialized next to her, red-tipped white ears cocked in curiosity, his white fur rustling as if he'd just settled from a run. Did you need me, Caitlin? She patted his cool white fur in greeting. Always, sweet boy. Hesitation sluiced over her, but she steeled her will and picked up the lights. What do you think of these? Chapter 5. Ronabwe sniffed at the lights. Caitlin crossed her fingers, hoping he didn't tell her the lights contained some sort of evil spirit. They were too pretty to be a haven for evil. Besides, what she'd seen a moment ago didn't scream imp to her. Still, how many things existed in the Otherworld? So far, she'd seen imps, guardians, goddesses, supernatural hunting hounds, and ghosts, but never in a million years would she have expected dragons. Yet one visited her now, often. What else might be out there she didn't know about? Ronabwe would recognize the being inside, though, and she valued his expert advice. 1 red-tipped white ear straightened. Caitlin's sense of alert tingled across her in. Do you sense anything there, boy? Yes, Ronabui said. Something. Something. She raised her voice. Wait, Ronabui says there's something otherworldly about them. She hoped the neighbors didn't overhear. She didn't want to explain what her beloved hound of Anwin was, why she heard him say something, and that no, she didn't need to call her therapist right now or check into the nearest funny farm. That there was far more in the world that her fellow Gulf Breeze citizens didn't know about and likely didn't want to know existed. Is it a threatening something? Ronabui sniffed the lights. No. Caitlin took a deep breath, shook out her hands. I still don't feel anything odd here, either. What do you smell? Anwin folk. But outside. He says he smells something from Anwin, but outside. She frowned. What the heck does that mean? A silent minute while Trevor eyed the lights, holding his hand over them. A soft glow lit his fingertips. I don't feel anything threatening either. Did you, though? No, it's not harmful. All right? Trevor eyed the lights, then patted the hound's head. Why didn't you mention these Anwin folks yesterday? What kind of Anwin folks did he mean? A spirit of a once live person? A guardian? They were asleep. Caitlin and Trevor shared a puzzled glance. Rubbing her hands down her face, Caitlin willed away the burst of cold air blowing across the yard. I guess we'll get some new ones. A whoosh in the air drew their attention to the sky. Retgar circled the shop. The wind, the flap of his wings stirred up, loosened a drape of tinsel she'd taped on the railing. Rather than making a mental note to fix it later, Caitlin went right over and smoothed the tape down again. Retgar hovered a handspan away from where she stood on the porch, shrunk down to toy size and landed on the railing. Tinsel fluttered as he settled his wings. Ronabui shot for their checkout desk. Caitlin laughed at him and addressed their visitor. Hey there, Retgar, what brings you back? Good day, my friends, the dragon said in his light Welsh accent. I've come. I don't mean to cut you off, but is everything okay? Caitlin eyed the cloak. The patches of Trevor's beard hair and those of her red locks mixed in with them still held the weave. Golden highlights of her contribution to his cloak shimmering in the sun. You don't need me to repair your cloak again, do you? Or was Beryl right when she suggested their recent help meant they'd adopted him and now he would come whenever he pleased? Caitlin shrugged off the thought. I don't care, as long as he doesn't scare away our customers or set the store on fire. I didn't know you'd be busy. We'd be less so if I could get these lights working. Trevor folded his hands around them, careful to keep the bulbs from banging together. Once we're done here, our plan for the night was to go surfing. Thursday was Yule, but it was still warm enough for a visit to the beach. Are you sure you don't need help with something? No, I'm on my way home to Cymru. Caitlin knew he spoke the Welsh name of his country, of his home country, of Wales. I'm going to visit my kin for the holiday. Retgar dug his clawed right paw into the cloak and, withdrawing it, dropped a sprig of mistletoe into Caitlin's hand. And I thought I'd call on you first to wish you a merry Yule. Caitlin held up the mistletoe, studying its white berries. Oh, thanks. Same to you. Did you find what you were after yesterday? I did, but my family isn't as hard to please as you humans tend to be. Caitlin nodded. A fish or two and a pretty shell or some pyrite and you're happy as can be. Pyrite? Do you think me so cheap? Sorry, Caitlin winked at him. I meant to say sea glass. Hard to say if he took offense or teased. He didn't roar at her or grumble, so she decided to go with the latter interpretation. Retgar's rainbow irises whirled. I thought you did. He studied the lights in Trevor's grasp. Is there something I can help you with? Since you asked, Caitlin crossed the porch and took the lights from Trevor while he got to his feet. Dragons don't know much about electric lights, do you? She explained she could buy different ones, and would if there was no other option, but she found these little confections of glass and wire closer suited to their personal style. But Ronabui says there's something in them, and I agree there is something there, but what? That's the question. What do you get from them? Vague pictures is all. I'd really hoped to hang them for decorations, but they seem to be against the idea. What they need, though, I can't for the life of me determine. The explanation tumbled out of her as it had with her coven last night. Can you figure out what he's feeling? Let me see them. Trevor glanced at her askance, but made his own request as she handed the light string to the dragon. I'd appreciate it if you can figure out the problem, but even if you can't, it's fine. I'll run down to the local everything store and hope for the best. Taking them in his claws, Retgar studied them. There, he peered at the tag and swiveled one eye to study Trevor. These were made in Wales. That's the other reason we like them, Caitlin said, and why we're disappointed they don't work. Retgar made a little rumbling sound as he considered the lights, toggling one bulb then another. Trevor entered the shop, plugged them in, and flicked the light switch. Nothing. He came back out to stand by her side. Dang it, I hoped we'd gotten the problem. Retgar touched a bulb. No, I see you haven't. A car zoomed by in the street, Holly Jolly Christmas blaring from its stereo. Retgar hummed the tune as he set about examining another bulb. The dragon liked Christmas music? Who knew? He lowered his hand, posing a question. You're a witch. Do you not know what the problem is? Caitlin pushed away the smile his singing wrought. She shared a glance with Trevor. I have a suspicion, but I wanted your perspective. Let me guess, Trevor said. They're cheaper than we thought. They're not hot enough. He glanced to the sky. My guess is the weather is too warm, and they don't think you need them. Hot wasn't the answer she'd thought he'd give. What's not... Her brain rewound his statement, squeaked to a halt. Who or what thinks we don't need them? Please don't say a ghost, please. He didn't. The fairies inside. Yet his pronouncement surprised Caitlin all the same. Christmas light fairies. All the signs were there, the lights that permeated her meditation, the feeling something was and wasn't right to the lights, the need they had to make some sense of them. I wondered. You did? I saw them. Well, in my vision I saw something. She wiggled her fingers, indicating wiggling beings. She shook her head in wonder. I didn't dare suspect they were anything more than wisps of smoke or something like that. Not something we could see and interact with. The smile was hard to suppress, but I hoped anyway. Fairies, Trevor chuckled and smacked his forehead. That's right. The woman we bought these from told me a funny story. She said when she was a child, she thought her family enticed fairies to live in them. That's how her mother explained lighting them every Christmas, talking to them when she plugged them in. Did it work? I don't know. She thought it did, but she told me she was only 3 years old at the time and had stopped doing that long before we came along. He touched a bulb. Welcome, little... Wait, are they good spirits? For the most part, Retgar said, examining the bulbs, when treated with correct hospitality. What's acceptable hospitality for a fairy of this sort? They'd prefer cedar chips for their beds, and instead of the inorganic fluff you wrap these lights in right now, and maybe a little milk with honey now and then. Done. Caitlin peered at the lights. Something blinked across the surface of the glass. She whistled her appreciation. Good is welcome. She hoped he was right about their demeanor, but even benevolence didn't mean they held no anger at all, did it? How did they feel about their entrapment inside those light bulbs? Angry fairies she didn't need, nor did she need them to take their anger out on her by making it snow over her town because she'd been psychically clueless for a moment or three. To be safe, she blessed them and hoped they wouldn't get it into their heads to run amok. I wish they'd do whatever it is they do, just for the short term. Can you entreat them to light up or whatever? I didn't want to have to buy more lights and investigate if they too had spirits they'd have to appease. If she could even find more Christmas lights in town at this late date. There were always online shops and quick shipping. But if it makes them happier, I will leave them alone and do without. Let me try. One more thing before you do. Don't you go messing with my warm weather, pal. Caitlin shook her fists playfully. Or else. Trevor laughed, stuck the mistletoe in her shirt pocket, and ran a hand along her shoulder. The weather doesn't have anything to do with the lights, fairy-driven or not. Sorry, that's the way of our world. Sunlight shined off the frosted surface of the glass. She turned the bulb a smidge. A tiny dot appeared in the frosted glass. Caitlin brought the lights in for a closer look. The dot blinked. The bulb warmed in her fingers. The shape of small diaphanous wings appeared inside the bulb, extending from the humanoid figure's back. Caitlin laughed and thrust the string at Trevor. Oh my goddess, did you see that? He's right. Trevor rubbed his eyes, refocused on the glass. Sprite lights. Who knew? Not surprised, given our life. Hang on a minute, little one. Trevor studied her. Do you care if we never use these lights again? Why? I can take them apart, but it will render them useless. The fairies are trapped in there, aren't they? I think no. They're fine where they are. Trevor slowly rotated the bulb. The fairy inside slipped a bit, but soon caught its footing. He stopped long enough to shake his fist at Trevor, but strolled along as he moved the bulb in a last twist before realizing what he saw. Oh, sorry about that. He set the light string down and glanced at Retgar. Are you sure they're not unhappy? He took up the lights Trevor had discarded. After a moment, his lips moved, but she didn't hear a thing he said. A fairy slipped out, hovered in the air, then zipped to the hedge. A few seconds later, it returned to the bulb. Caitlin could have sworn it stretched and yawned. There you are. She told me she's fine with living there, particularly when it's cold. Retgar harumphed and blew on the bulbs. A thin flame spiraled from his lips, transferred to the bulb. She could have sworn the fairy inside giggled. Its cheeks flushed red until she and her bulb glowed with bright effervescence. Retgar tapped his claw against the glass. Will that do? What did you do? He offered the lights to Caitlin. I gave it a fleeting kiss and greeting and a suggestion of what you needed. Taking the string from him, she saw one after another. A new flame lit in every bulb until the whole string glowed. The glowing stopped at her fingers. The wire slipped from her grasp and floated up to the eaves, where the whole set looped itself around the stars and moons there, then floated around the sides of the shop and around the front again to encircle the name Starfort Collectibles. Caitlin winked. I believe it will help. A new thought occurred to her. Had the previous owner angered the fairies by boxing their lights up the rest of the year? She didn't remember overhearing her speak of any trouble, just that she didn't find them useful any longer. Who wouldn't find fairies useful? Would they like it better if we leave these outside year-round? Fairies! Wait until I tell Beryl! Trevor ran his fingers down the wood of their staircase railing. Maybe? He directed the question to Retgar. I believe 'twould make the fairies happier, yes. One fairy's light twinkled brighter. Squinting at the bulb, Caitlin thought she saw the little spirit inside whirling in a dance. Was it agreeing? I guess we'll leave them out then, unless we have hurricane force winds one day. Think you know everything, and then a dragon teaches you something new. She nodded to Retgar. Thank you. Man, fairies. Beryl is going to be sorry she missed this. Caitlin slid her arm around Trevor. I was thinking the same thing. Do they grant wishes? Trevor asked. All our bills are covered for the most part by the shop. She nodded to the store. What else could be of use? If we ask for them to keep your kind at bay this year, will they grant it? Retgar cocked his arrowhead-shaped head. And go against your agreement with Arianrod. I suppose. Caitlin made a face, thinking, yeah, you're right. Anchoring her again wouldn't make for a good holiday. What if we wish she sends us the benign ones and keeps the nasties in her prison where they belong? Trevor tapped his fingers on the handle of his hammer. There's a thought. You can argue with her over the definition of benign, though. I'm not brave enough. He's right, you know. Caitlin shuddered, contemplating the notion of angering Arianrod again. Not good. Never mind. It'll be better to keep my mouth shut. Retgar nodded in his sage way, agreed. It's easier to settle for making our customers' Yule cheery and bright. She handed Trevor another set of nails. We should hang a few more ornaments while we still have the sunlight. Sounds, as you say, like a perfect plan, and I'll leave you to it. Retgar said his farewells. I must away to see my family. They're waiting for me. Merry Yule, my friends. They waved to him as he launched into the sky. Even as he disappeared into a cloud bank, the older gentleman who bought the desk pulled into their lot and opened his car door. Did I interrupt? He shaded his eyes from the overcast sun's glare. He gave up and slid his sunglasses back on. Admiring your lights? His question proved he hadn't seen the dragon. Few in town knew paranormal and fantastical beings frequented the couple's properties. This fellow wasn't one of those few, or he would have had a different response. Admiring something, anyway. Trevor winked at her. For a moment, indecision flitted over the man's face as if he didn't know how to answer. Instead, he studied the lights, nodded in what Caitlin took as approval, and went with an inoffensive, they're nice. Not what I'm here for, but nice. He jerked a thumb toward the street, much classier than most people's decorations. Caitlin thanked him, and he broached the subject of more interest to him. Do you still have the pin set I called about? Did you really hold it for me? I promised I would. She opened the door for him, and he breezed inside. Man, you made my Christmas. Trevor shared a glance with her, then gave a little salute to the Christmas lights twinkling over their porch. Wow. Caitlin tucked the mistletoe into the band, holding up Trevor's dark ponytail, and kissed him, carols singing in her mind. Merry Yule, indeed. The end.